Good evening. I'm John Wensky, Chairperson of the Shrewsbury School Committee, and welcome to our meeting for Wednesday, April 13th, 2022. Tonight's meeting is being broadcast live on Celco channels 29 and 329 and streamed live on Shrewsbury Media Connections website. Thank you to SMC Executive Director Mark Sarah and Liz Poplowski for their assistance with this broadcast. Tonight's meeting will be rebroadcast between now and our next scheduled meeting on Wednesday, May 4th. The first item on our agenda is public participation. Tonight, no one has requested to speak at public participation, but for future meetings, if anybody wishes to speak during public participation regarding concerns pertaining to policy, budget, or the performance of the superintendent, please contact the chair prior to the next meeting on May 4th. The next item on our agenda is chairpersons and members' reports. And maybe take a little different approach to how we do this tonight, because I'd like to acknowledge the final meeting for Dr. Dale McGee. After being on the committee for 12 years, I believe you were elected back in 2010, if I'm doing the math right. So I just wanted to acknowledge the service that you provided to the school committee over the last 12 years, and certainly give other committee members a chance to speak. So maybe we'll start with Ms. Fritz.
Well, I know you and I have served the longest for this sitting committee. I know you're a champion supporter of public education. You always look out for the best interests of students. You care deeply that everybody receives what they need. I know you are very humble. You probably don't like any of these accolades that we're giving you tonight, because you do you do things quietly under the radar, but you are a very hard worker. You've added tremendously to the education of students for these 12 years. I consider you a mentor, but I also consider you a very good friend. So I'm going to really miss working with you, and also just the guidance that you've provided to all of us over these years in taking making hard decisions, asking hard questions is a good thing. And I really respect everything that you've done, and I will miss you, but I know we will have our coffees and continue our friendship. So good luck.
Thank you. Ms. Palachino.
It has been an honor to serve with Dr. McGee, who during your service have brought a lot of unique perspectives to the school committee, which I think have enhanced the collective experience and conversations of the Shrewsbury School Committee beyond what most school committees have, in addition to any other number of unique perspectives you bring as a medical professional. That has certainly been extremely helpful over the past few years, as we have all confronted a lot more details about medical science than I think that we ever wanted to. But of all of the many different things that you have done uniquely, of the five of us over the years, the one that I want to single out for the most praise is your effectiveness as an advocate. Dr. McGee, for those who don't know, and many do, over the time of your service as a school committee member, have been passionate about communicating about Shrewsbury Public Schools and the needs of Shrewsbury Public Schools to our senior population, who often don't have, absent grandchildren, don't have a direct connection to Shrewsbury Public Schools. And that has been extraordinarily helpful in helping the broader community understand the needs, concerns, and role of Shrewsbury Public Schools. And that has made a difference in enhancing the standing and financial position of Shrewsbury Public Schools twice over now. So there are many, many Shrewsbury students who benefit from your service over the years, and there are many students for years to come who will continue to benefit from your service. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Heffernan.
Yeah, thank you very much. Dr. McGee, it's fair to say that when I decided to run for school committee, I really looked at you as a mentor, and while not in a formal way, but kind of how to act and how to think about difficult problems, because rarely are things actually black and white here, and you come in with you think you know, and then you realize the amount of stuff you don't know enough to make decisions. And I remember having decided to run for school committee, I was still finishing up some graduate school and spending a lot of time in our public library, and finding you in the library doing the thing that you do, which I didn't understand until I got to know you a little more. And so when I think about how you approach a problem, you ask a lot of critical questions, and then you do a lot of research and dig at it, and that's been beneficial to me as I've served. But at the time, I remember finding you, and you explained to me that you were looking through the registration data from the Shrewsbury Public Schools, and I think you were in a book of like the 1850s, I don't even remember, maybe 1900s. They were old. I don't think they got a lot of attention, but you were giving them care and love. And ultimately, actually, we're charting really the history of our public school system and the ways in which when I think about as we open the new Beal School and talk about the history of where we've gone and where we've grown, it's people like you who are really contributing and keeping us grounded. And I really, really have appreciated that. And so thank you for all that you've done. And I will try to do the research you do. I'm not sure I can get quite as deep, but I will do my best. Thank you, Dale.
Well, Dale, it's been a pleasure to serve on the committee with you. I remember back in 2015 when I was deciding whether or not I wanted to make this commitment, and I set up time with you. We had coffee at Dunkin', and you said on average it was maybe 200 hours of service per year. Of course, that was pre-COVID times, so we've certainly seen that potentially double over the, since post-COVID. But certainly, I appreciate your thoughtful, insightful commentary, and I really appreciate your passion for Shrewsbury. Looking through old town meeting books and just really, teaching me a lot of things about the town that I've grown up in. So thank you for your service. I really appreciate it. Also appreciate the School Talk episodes that we've recorded together, including the latest one on media literacy. Shameless plug, but I want to throw that out there. It was a really good episode. But thank you for the service that you provided Shrewsbury and to the public schools. And as a token of our appreciation from the committee, we got you a little gift.
Oh my.
That kind of speaks to your
right to the
passion for the history of Shrewsbury. So
Would you want you to open it?
yeah, we do
We
want you to open
it.
it. There's a
So
story
you can see
behind
one
it.
thing in there, because there is a story.
Exactly. So
Lots of tissue paper.
Oh my. Bow tie.
Well, one thing we get, Dale, was a bow tie, because he is the connoisseur of bow ties, and it's blue and gold.
Bow ties.
Yes?
To go
Yeah.
in number 5.
yes.
This, Dale loves history, so this is a picture of the number 5 schoolhouse on Old Mill Road. It's an original watercolor from a graduate of Shrewsbury High School, Ashley Bertrand Prescott. No one else has one, and we know you love history, so we thought that would be perfect.
Yeah, thank you so much. I been thinking about this, and there's a certain symmetry to this evening. Growing up, it was made very clear to me that if I was going to leave the neighborhood I was growing up in, it was going to be through getting a better education and progressing that way. And that, plus the admiration that my family had for the doctor that took care of us for 3 generations, kind of started me on my career path. And about 25 years ago, there was a report about increased infant mortality in Worcester. And I thought bringing the perspective of an obstetrician gynecologist would be a good idea, so I joined it and became their data person, and quickly learned that the issue with excess infant mortality in Worcester was not related to access to health care. It was not related to the quality of health care. It was related to socioeconomic factors. And that there probably was no lever that would be more effective than improving the education of the mothers and fathers in that community. That would actually affect the infant mortality. So 12 years ago, when I was asking John LeBeau if there was a way I could do some volunteer work in Shrewsbury, he suggested I get on the school committee. And it kind of made sense, given where my direction was going and how much I've learned. This has been an incredible learning opportunity for me, and really come to appreciate the power of education and the importance of education to a community. If you want to lower the crime rate, improve the education. If you want to lower the unemployment rate, improve the education. Education is where the American dream is born, and we are where this community takes care of that for our people. So working with you this past 12 years has been such an honor. This is such an incredibly good group to work with. And this department is so good at what it does that this has really been a pleasure. And as I say, it brings me sort of full circle from where I started and what was done for me at one time. And now I'm wrapping up, hopefully helping someone else.
Great. Thank you so much. Dr. Sawyer,
Well, certainly on behalf of the school district, certainly on behalf of the students, behalf of all the faculty and staff, and especially on behalf of our leadership team here at Central Office who have worked most closely with Dr. McGee, I want to thank you for all the significant contributions you've made over your career as a school committee member. Our careers in these roles have been pretty parallel. I hadn't been a superintendent very long when you were elected, and so it will be very different not to have you on the committee and working with you. I think that you've been an incredibly thoughtful steward of the schools, and I think that's being stewards and advocates, I think, are the primary responsibilities and roles of school committee members. I think that one of the things I most admire about you is your ability to take very complex topics and then very succinctly communicate about them in a way people understand. And that's something that I've learned a ton from you about, and still have ways to go, but I'm always just amazed how you can boil things down to their essence and really be able to get the point across to folks in a way that makes sense. I think your strong advocacy for school funding to be adequate and what's resulted in our district, and we'll talk about that later in our budget presentation. We're in a very, very different place, a historically much better place funding-wise for our schools, and a lot of that is due to Dr. McGee's advocacy. And with an eye, for what those resources students need, and I think your deep commitment to making sure that especially students who might be disadvantaged in some way are making sure that they're benefiting, just as you so eloquently described the power of public education. I think that you've always had a very keen eye for innovation and have promoted that. I know you've been on some different study committees. You're on our Porch to a Graduate Study Committee, our innovation team before that. And I think bringing some outside thinking and certainly making sure to continue to provoke our thinking in ways to help us get better is something that has been beneficial to me as a superintendent and certainly to our team as well. And certainly an outstanding public servant for our community. So with that, on behalf of everyone, thank you. And I know that Ms. Clowder has a little gift that the leadership team would like to give to you. And that also follows the theme of history and literature, and we know the amount of reading, like Ms. Heffernan said, that you like to do. So,
Very good.
Thank you so much.
so there's a gift card for you to do your reading and books and listening and whatnot, but then some history books that you can share with your grandchildren. So,
This is great.
thank you so much and congratulations.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you so much. All right, we'll move on to the next item on our agenda, which is Superintendent's Report. Dr. Sawyer.
Thank you. I will just add that a family just received a text and an email about an hour ago that bus registration, excuse me, for the next school year is open. Would encourage people to read that email, click on the link. The sooner people register for bus transportation next year, the better our planning can be. So we would appreciate people doing that, and there's all kinds of information on our website about that. There's a link right in the email that went out to families, so look for that. I also wanted to announce to the community that I have appointed Dr. Scott Mulcahy as the next principal of the Walter J. Patton School. Dr. Mulcahy is a very accomplished educational leader. He's currently the assistant principal at the Nelson Place School and the Worcester Public Schools. Prior to that, he has served as an assistant principal in both the Harvard Public Schools and the Sudbury Public Schools, and he was a very highly thought of teacher in the Hudson Public Schools prior to that. Dr. Mulcahy is extremely accomplished. I think when we went on our site visit to Nelson Place School and spoke to his group of current students, group of current parents he works with, a group of his faculty and staff, it became very clear that what we heard when he interviewed with us, when he visited Patton for a day, when he spoke at our public forum, was absolutely, even though we learned a lot of things we were very impressed with, he had probably been overly humble because the impact he has on students and staff and the families that he serves is remarkable. And we're very excited to bring him into his first principalship at the Walter J. Patton School when Dr. Lizotte goes from serving as the acting principal back into her assistant superintendent role full-time. So we welcome Dr. Mulcahy to our school community. His wife Courtney has actually been a math teacher at Oak Middle School for about the past 12 or 13 years at this point, and also our swim coach at the high school, and they're residents of West Boylston, where they live with their children, and really, he's very excited to become part of the Patton community and the Shrewsbury community. So we welcome Dr. Mulcahy, and that is Superintendent's report this evening.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments? No? Good. All right, move on to the next item on our agenda, which is a time-scheduled appointment. It is a student spotlight for Parker Road Preschool. So for background, this year, our schools continue to be focused on designing and implementing curriculum, specifically targeting social emotional learning standards across all grade levels, to provide information regarding ways in which our youngest students are receiving instruction in social and emotional learning skills and given opportunities to practice and generalize those skills across settings and situations. Students and staff from Parker Road Preschool are spotlighting one of the monthly character traits included in the Character Strong program. Tonight, we're happy to have with us the preschool director, Bridget Nichols, and school psychologist, Deborah Cushman, to walk us through. Welcome.
Thank you. So first, we'd like to begin by thanking Dr. Lizotte and Dr. Sawyer for asking us to be part of the School Connection series, as well as Chairman Wensky. A special thank you to Dr. McGee in getting to take part in your special evening, and the school committee members for the opportunity to share with you and the community about Parker Road Preschool. Tonight we will be sharing, as Chairman Wensky said, specifically about the social emotional learning that is happening at Parker Road and how we are laying a strong foundation for our preschool students to engage with the ever-changing world around them. For those of you who may not know, Parker Road is an integrated preschool program, which means that we have a large community of people who help to meet the needs of all of our students. We have teacher and paraprofessionals who design and implement curriculum that will meet the learning needs of every child in our classroom. We have related service providers such as a school psychologist, speech and language pathologist, occupational therapist, physical therapist, and they are all key members of our classroom teams who provide special education services. We have a front office staff, our school nurse, school secretary, who keep us healthy and safe. And then, of course, without our parents and caregivers, we would not be able to partner with them and have the privilege to serve their children. As an integrated program serving children of all abilities within our classrooms, we structure our classrooms to encourage and facilitate learning opportunities among our students. We implement standards-based curriculum that is engaging and meaningful to keep our students' attention and having fun. Our goal is to make them kindergarten ready so that they can move on to whichever neighborhood school they are destined for. In line with the district's core value of equity, our inclusive classrooms foster learning and social relationships between children of all abilities so that we can learn the value each person has in this world and the impact that we have on one another. We always want to show our students that they have value in another person's lives and other people add value to your life as well. We are always committed to growing together. That is a key for us.
So research tells us that a strong social emotional foundation prepares our children for success in school and beyond. And we often say that preschool is all about social emotional learning, as our children for the first time separate from their families and learn to be part of a classroom community. They need to learn where they fit into that community, how to be part of a group, and how to get along with others. So in this way, social emotional learning is built into every part of the school day. But we also recognize that there is a place for explicit, developmentally appropriate social emotional learning instruction. Research has shown us that social emotional learning can be successfully taught using evidence-based lessons and activities within the classroom setting. So with this in mind, we've spent the last 2 years developing a new social emotional learning curriculum based on the Massachusetts Early Childhood Standards for Social Emotional Learning and the CASEL competencies, which have been adopted across the entire district. And this curriculum is organized around the 10 character traits identified by Character Strong, which are key to social emotional functioning and success. And these traits are being targeted not just at preschool, but through all the grades up through high school. At the preschool level, we start with courage because everything is new to our preschoolers. From separating from their families to walking in the door or saying hi to a friend, they need to use their courage. And then we move on to responsibility, hanging up their backpacks, washing their hands, cleaning up their toys, or clearing their snacks. And we just keep going from there. gratitude, kindness, cooperation, empathy, respect, perseverance, honesty, and creativity. Basically 1 trait a month. And we have to work to make these difficult concepts accessible to our young students. So we have lots of developmentally appropriate activities, stories, songs, crafts, games, dramatic play, lots and lots of stickers. And we connect it all to concrete skills. Teachers and students are making connections when working in other curriculum areas. When we read about Goldilocks and the 3 bears, we're talking about if Goldilocks is showing respect. We're talking about perseverance when students are writing their names, or doing our Young Athletes program, how children can keep trying and not give up. Today, actually, I was having trouble putting together a toy that had sort of fallen apart, and a child congratulated me for persevering and not giving up. Family newsletters are sent home each month with suggested books and simple activities to practice each month's trait. And the traits build upon one another and are referred to even after the month is over. So it's not one and done, they keep going.
At the last school committee meeting, you had an opportunity to hear from Meg Bartlett, Meg Belcito, and Noelle Freeman about what our school district is doing in response to the mental health crisis. At the preschool level, our tier 1 instruction is what Mrs. Cushman was just sharing about in terms of working on these character traits, explaining how these skills will build upon each other to prepare our youngest learners to have access to coping strategies, to being able to identify how they're feeling, how others are feeling, and therefore how do we act when we have these big feelings. Since our little ones aren't able to be here, like the other schools have come to share with students here with us, we have a video that we made. We really we're excited to just share with you a little bit about what happens behind the doors at Parker Road Preschool. So give me one moment, please.
Hands in your lap.
Hi, Mrs. Cushman.
Hello,
Great
hi,
to
friends.
see you.
It's nice to be here. I'm excited because we have a new word to learn. Are you ready?
A new word.
Although, friends, this is a hard word. I'm a little nervous. I'm going to have to use my courage.
Okay.
Okay, I hope I can write it. Are you ready?
Okay.
It is a big word. Are you ready?
Yes.
Here we go. Okay. My hand's getting a little tired.
Do this. Try this. You can do it. Keep going. Keep going.
Doing like this. Oh no. I don't know how to.
I'm not sure I can do it. I don't know. It's a hard word.
You can do hard things. We can do hard things. Keep trying.
You can tell it from here. Yay!
Almost. I see you looking worried, but we've got it. You've got it. Give her the thumbs up. She's keep trying. You got it. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going.
Go fast!
Keep going.
Yeah, I have to fix.
I did it! You did it! I did it!
That was hard.
That was hard. Look at that word. Isn't that a big word?
Whoa.
I did it! Oh, yes! Friends, look at this word. It's so big. Oh my gosh. Oh, I didn't think I could do it, but I kept trying. Look at this word. It's called perseverance. Can you clap that with me? Let's clap it. Ready? Perseverance. Let's tap our bellies. Perseverance. Let's do a little wiggly dance. Perseverance. And let's whisper it.
Awesome. Let's talk a little bit about, empathy. Does anybody remember what empathy means?
No.
Understanding how each other feels? Levi, what do you remember about empathy?
If somebody gets hurt, I think I hurt their arm.
If somebody gets hurt, you could
Me.
say it again. My ears weren't working. Say, are you okay? That's so nice.
Dylan,
What are you looking at?
remember how we learned about kindness?
Yeah.
How can you be kind?
Share your toys with your friends.
Sharing your toys with your friends? How can you be kind?
Like
playing nicely with your friends. High five. Those are two great ways to be so kind.
All right, go ahead, Andy.
Go ahead, Andy. You can do it.
Yeah, you can do it. Just what Uruvi said. Have perseverance. Keep going. No, he's fine. You're not gonna run into him. Okay? Climb on up. Don't give up. Show your perseverance. Do it, do it, do it. You're okay. Athanas is just sitting down. Go ahead. Show your perseverance. Good job. Woo! Yay, Andy! Oh, Uruvi, you're such a good friend for cheering. All right.
We do have a lot of fun at Parker Road. We do a lot of play, we do a lot of hard work, but it's really good.
Well, it's great because I'm really excited about what's happening with all this, but the teachers are excited. And what's really great is the kids are really excited about this. I go in each month to do a kickoff lesson, and the kids are just really excited to find out about what the word is each month. And they're excited. They're using the language. They're making the connections, and they're excited about what we're doing. So where are we going moving forward? We are working at the building level to create tools for pre and post assessments that are easy, that are child friendly, and that are meaningful to help inform our instruction. I meet regularly with representatives from the elementary schools to coordinate our efforts so that our students have a cohesive social emotional learning experience as they progress through the grades. And we continue to partner with families to support social emotional growth at home through monthly newsletters, through strategies to practice the different traits and activities, as well as I offer about twice a month active parenting workshops as well that families can participate in to support social emotional learning and family engagement as well. So we're doing lots of things to support children and families in this domain, and it's really a lot of fun. So, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. Colleagues, any questions or comments? Ms. Fritz?
Just watching this, the very last thing that I did in a school, and Jason was there too, it was that we went to read at Parker Road.
Yes,
And
before
Joe
the
had
pandemic.
called us and thought we'd be closed for a couple of days in March of 2020. We're like, yep, we'll get the schools cleaned, and you didn't know what would happen, then. So it's amazing to see the life and excitement in the school. It's just, because that was my very last thing, until seeing this. So it's just exciting, and I love this program. I think starting little and laying foundation and giving tools as they get older and build upon for that whole child is so important. And that you mentioned the young athletes. I think that was the girl on the Jungle Gym, whatever they call them now, going up. I think that's great because disappointment is part of life, and sometimes we fail and we need to pick ourselves up, and it's not always fun. So I think starting students very young is such a good foundation. It'll just become part of everything that they do going forward. So thank you for everything that you're doing. It's just a great, and I loved seeing it, so thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Heffernan? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Wensky. Thank you for being here tonight. Nice to see you both. I think I have a very soft spot in my heart for Parker Road. All three of my kids went to Parker Road. And I can't actually think in my head of a parent who doesn't have positive things to say about Parker Road if they got into Parker Road. That is the sort of the linchpin. Like, did I get it, and did I get the time spot that I want? Which leads me to think, the social emotional learning and explaining, it's maybe in some ways the easiest for people to understand because they think of preschool as getting kids ready for kindergarten and being a good friend and being in groups and walking in lines and doing all those other very, very important things. So, but also articulating sort of how you bring in parents and how you bring in the staff to that is great. I think for us as a committee, one of the things as we move forward with the space study is thinking through, 2 or 3 years down the line, it's not inconceivable that we could be thinking about expansions to preschool, to pre-K, and what that might look like, whether that's, comes at us from the outside. And given the love that people have for this program, how we might need to build upon it. I think you've set an incredible foundation for that work, and I just want to thank you for all of it. I know there are lots of parents who feel very appreciative for the work that happens in your buildings, so thank you.
Thank you. Further comments? Ms. Palich?
I mean, my first thought, like Ms. Heffernan's, runs to access, and this is such a wonderful program, wishing that every family was able to access this, and I look at these lessons that kids are being taught. My first reaction on seeing the video was I wish that I started all of my days with these self-affirming reminders about perseverance, and wishing I had that much validation. But these are skills, and they're cute videos, and it's fun to laugh, but these are skills that we have seen individuals at all age levels, including and perhaps especially adults struggling with since the pandemic, and the value of being able to teach children at a young age these skills that are necessary not just for them to handle and govern themselves, but to interact effectively with their peers is essential. So just thank you for the work that you're doing, and thank you for bringing this to us so we could start our evening with this very uplifting piece.
Great. Well, thank you so much for the presentation. This is always helpful for us to visualize how these applications happen in the classroom, and we always enjoy the presentations that the students provide us with. But even with video, it really helps us, understand the value. So thank you so much for the presentation. Actually, one question I did have about the active parenting workshops. How often are those offered, and what do they involve?
So that is a curriculum that actually our parent group purchased for us a few years ago. I asked them to purchase for us. It's an evidence-based curriculum. It's structured to be, I believe, 6 sessions, but I've experimented with it over the years in different ways. So I'm doing it now. I started doing it over Zoom when there was the shutdown, and I've kept doing it over Zoom because to make it accessible to parents. So I now offer it about twice a month, morning and afternoon sessions, so 4 times twice a month. Well, did I say that right? Over the course of the year, broken into smaller chunks, so it's more than 6 sessions. And so there's sort of a set curriculum, but we really discuss whatever parents need to discuss, and really helping parents understand their children, understanding development, helping them have understanding their role with children, understanding childhood development, parenting strategies, how to encourage good behavior, respond to challenging behaviors, building the bond with your child, how to play with your child, all those good things.
Great.
So it's really a great program. I encourage you to jump on the Zooms at any time and check it out. It's a lot of fun. We have a lot of discussion. It's not just, I always hope it's not just me talking. I like it to be really discussion-based.
No, that's great. It's a great value to the community. Extend it beyond the classroom and to continue to reinforce these behaviors. It's just a great program. Thank you so much for presenting. Dr. Sawyer, other comments?
Thank you. I just want to thank Ms. Nichols, Ms. Cushman for the presentation and sharing the magic that happens at Parker Road Preschool every day. It's an extraordinary place for children. It has been, as for all of our schools, a very challenging couple of years, and the faculty and staff there deserve just incredible kudos in terms of the way that they've worked. And you can imagine some of the things, especially during the pandemic last year, and where it's not as easy to push out virtual work to preschoolers, right? There's a lot of things, and it was really important to partner with families, and they did some really amazing work to make connections and to help kids continue to grow and develop even when they couldn't be in school full time. And to have everyone back this year has been remarkably beneficial. At the same time, the challenges we've experienced with staffing shortages, people needing to really shift gears, move around a bit, cover for other people, that's something that has been I deeply appreciate as far as what the faculty and staff of Parker have done throughout the year to cope with some of these challenges. But the students are extremely well served, and I just want to commend both Ms. Cushman for her outstanding work as a school psychologist and leading some of this social emotional learning. The rest of the districts that we developed certainly has a lot to learn from what we do in preschool. And then Ms. Nichols, this is her 2nd year serving as director of the preschool program, and her leadership has really stabilized things and are really is serving both the staff and families, and then ultimately the students well. So thank you for all your efforts, and really appreciate the presentation this evening.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thanks for being here.
All right, next item on our agenda is also a time-scheduled appointment. It is a report from the Shrewsbury High School Student Advisory Committee. So under the Massachusetts Education Reform Act, school districts are required to have a student advisory committee consisting of 5 high school students who are elected by the student body. The SAC is required to meet with the school committee during the year to review various issues of concern to the student body. Mr. Andrew Smith, the Shrewsbury High School social sciences teacher. He serves as the faculty advisor to the SAC, and we have members of the SAC here presenting to us tonight. You wouldn't mind introducing yourself as you present?
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Hello, my name is Nikita Ram. I am a senior and I am the chairperson of the Student Advisory Committee. Thank you so much for having us here today to share our agenda. My fellow members will now go down the line and introduce themselves.
Hey guys, I'm Rishabh and I'm a senior.
I'm Laura and I'm a junior.
I'm Shalini and I'm a junior.
I'm Anushka and I'm a senior.
Student life. Students at Shrewsbury High School are entering quarter 4 in the 2021 to 2022 school year and are adapting to new policies.
Mask update. On March 4th, the mask mandate at school was lifted and it is now a choice to wear them. More and more students seem to have taken their masks off as this lifted mandate is still fairly recent. While some have expressed concern about this decision in regards to their safety, there is no doubt that seeing more people's faces has brought back a sense of normalcy, and both teachers and students have expressed great gratitude for this.
Late bus. As of Wednesday, March 9th, Shrewsbury High School introduced the late bus as another method of transportation for students to go home after school. These buses will run on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays and will drop students in centralized stops in various areas of Shrewsbury. Our faculty recognizes the importance of staying after school for extra help or participating in a club and are excited to allow more students to have this opportunity to connect with their peers without any transportation restrictions. Even better, there's no cost for students to ride the late bus, but the only requirement is to sign up through a link sent to students through Schoology. Students are extremely appreciative of this new adaptation and are excited to participate in activities they could have not had before.
Student general feelings. As a senior, I definitely feel a lot of weight lifted off my shoulders stress-wise. The school has supported me thus far and prepared me for what lies ahead, and I look forward to making the most out of the last few weeks and finishing off strong.
As of right now, I think SHS has been doing a really great job finding ways to bring students together more recently. Whether that is the excellent Black History Committee presentation, the creative spring musical, or the competitive sports games, I feel like more students want to get together to watch these events.
Like other juniors, I've been preparing for my final year of high school. The PSAT occurred earlier in the school year, and many juniors are taking the SAT. Those taking AP classes are also preparing for the AP exams in May. Although it does feel strange to be almost applying to colleges after spending most of our high school years in this pandemic, we're eager to finish our junior year strong.
Quarter three has taken quite a toll on my fellow juniors and I, since it is our first time being in full-time school for this long. However, teachers and faculty members have been quite considerate and continue to support us both in and out of school. We are excited for our upcoming senior year.
Seniors are getting closer to the finish line and are feeling hopeful for the future. 3 of us have already decided on where we are going to college. With college applications over, stress has been decreased overall with more time to spend on the things we love.
Senior breakfast. Seniors at SHS are celebrating 50 more days together through the annual Senior Breakfast, held during the first period on Thursday, March 17th. Breakfast foods such as bagels, muffins, and donuts from Gourmet Donuts were highlights of the morning and delicious. Our class officers and advisors have worked diligently to set up this memorable day for us, and all of us seniors are extremely thankful for them and all of their hard work to make our senior year unforgettable. Extracurriculars at SHS. SHS students have been enjoying and getting involved with various extracurriculars. We've had a great time doing the things we love outside of the school day.
Speech and debate. The SHS speech and debate team continues to have an outstanding performance at tournaments as it nears the end of the local season. Most recently, SHS hosted the annual Mardi Gras tournament, a further step toward normalcy after a pandemic-forced hiatus in in-person tournaments, and did very well. The team also took part in national qualifiers, as well as the annual Harvard National Forensics Tournament, and was the second team overall at the Massachusetts State Finals. More national tournaments will be taking place in the next few months. About 10 members of the team qualified to compete in nationals in Louisville, Kentucky. Team members are excited to finish strong in another year of competitions as more tournaments return to an in-person format. Go SHS.
Sports update. As winter sports have concluded, we are very proud of all of our athletes upon completion of their seasons. Congratulations to our track team for coming out on top at their state meet and bringing home some trophies to an already impressive collection, and congratulations to our girls varsity hockey team for going far in the playoffs. Our esports team continues to dominate, and we look forward to hearing about their achievements this spring. We have now transitioned into spring sports, where our athletes are looking forward to getting back outside and finishing up their athletic school year.
Spring musical. Students in the Performing Arts program have impressed audiences with the Broadway-like performance of the Putnam County Spelling Bee from March 18th through the 20th. This 1-hour show captivated audiences and garnered an amazing turnout for the first live musical in 2 years. Congrats to the whole cast and crew for putting on a great production. It was amazing, and we can't wait for next year.
The Science Fair is an amazing opportunity for young SHS students interested in the STEM field to get creative. They have the opportunity to do this independently or through the Research Methods program offered to freshmen and sophomores. 12 students advanced from the school fair to the regional fair, and a handful of students advanced to the state fair at MIT. Nevin Thinagar was the 4th student in the history of SHS to get first place at the regional fair and advanced to ISEF, which is the International Science and Engineering Fair. Projects ranged from reducing the impact of wingtip vortices on aircraft through the use of a novel winglet design to using deep neural networks to differentiate between human and synthetic speech. Students kept journals of the events, created a poster board, and even brought in samples of their projects. The Science Fair has always been a great way for students to participate in hands-on learning and follow their passions.
SHS Events and Fundraisers. As the school year progresses, students have been actively participating in various events and fundraisers to make positive contributions to our community.
Book Drive. The National English Honor Society ran their annual book drive where all students were urged to bring in books in good condition to be donated to elementary and middle schools in the area. Roughly 1,000 books were donated and collected, and 710 of those books were donated to Clark Street Elementary in Worcester. The book drive was very successful and always serves as an example of how giving the students at SHS are.
Black History Assembly. In February, the SHS Black History Committee presented their annual Black History Assembly. The assembly included many educational and inspirational performances which students watched via Zoom from classrooms. This event also brought further attention toward the racism and discrimination many Black people face today in America. Overall, the presentation was a success, and the Black History Committee did an excellent job of organizing the event. Although some students felt uncomfortable with the reaction to the assembly outside of school, there have been ongoing discussions about this topic, including a student forum that occurred on Thursday, March 3rd.
Seniors taking the capstone elective had an amazing opportunity this year to work on an independent year-long project on any topic they were passionate about. Projects ranged from the topic of mental health to artificial intelligence. Students were able to display what they had been working on all year in the media center for the rest of the school to view. Some students are aiming to take their projects into the real world. The changes these students were able to make were extremely impressive.
SHS Impact Makers. Student leaders in our school were selected to attend the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Summit on Friday, January 21st from 8:15 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. It consisted of mini workshops and seminar sessions which opened up conversations within our school and pointed out existing issues with accessibility in our communities. We have had a follow-up to the conference during advisory with administration. The group will continue to enact change within the school in the coming year. In the future, 12 students will be attending a Connections Conference in Sutton to work towards the goal of creating an inclusive environment for all.
Thank you for your continuous support of the SAC.
Great. Thank you for the presentation. Colleagues, questions or comments? Anybody? Yeah, go ahead, Ms.
I can't help myself but want to know what's happening for the three of you who are seniors. You said you've made some plans, and clearly school's gotten a little more calming for you, which I'm glad to hear. But tell us what's next. We've enjoyed having you with us for the year.
Sure. I will be going to Lehigh University, and I will be studying at the College of Health and majoring in public health.
I'll be studying finance at Northeastern University.
Excellent.
I'm going to be studying computer science at UC Berkeley.
And as somebody who changed her major 7 times, if that changes, that's okay too. But those are great goals. It's nice to have you here. And can you just remind us, as you cycle off, what happens next year? I don't remember what the process is. So it's an election based or an appointed based, or how will that work? And when does that happen to fill those open seats?
Yeah, so we have elections coming up right now.
Oh,
so since there's 3 seniors out, we're probably going to have 3 new people coming in. Mm-hmm. And there's elections for student council and student advisory committee.
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, thank you for all of your service. It's been a pleasure. I really appreciate it.
Comments? No. Thank you for the presentation, not just today, but throughout the year. It's really helpful for us to hear what's on the minds of the student body up at the high school. And you've all done a great job just giving us the information that we need, and congratulations to the seniors as well. Just actually a follow-up question to the seniors. Is this something that you might pursue in college in terms of student government, or?
Yeah, personally, I'm really interested in running for the student government at Lehigh, so yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, this is my first year part of the advisory committee, and I've loved it so far. So it's definitely something I'd be interested in getting involved with in college.
Great.
Yeah, I haven't looked too much into the opportunities there, but it definitely would be really great to continue using my voice for the people around me.
Very important, yeah. Thank you so much. You're all very well presented. Thank you to your faculty advisor as well, Mr. Smith. Did a great job preparing these students. Thank you. Dr. Sawyer, any further comments?
Thank you, and I appreciate all the support from the school committee for this outstanding group of young leaders. I think they're coming back one more time before the year's out, so we'll be able to properly honor you then. We're getting into the, and I had asked them actually to postpone. We had such a chock-full agenda last meeting they were going to present. We asked them to delay by one, but we're looking forward to seeing them again later in the spring. I do appreciate you being able to share a perspective about what's happening at Shrewsbury High School for those who are watching and who watch this as well online. I think that the sense that things are feeling certainly a lot more typical and normal than they did a year ago is a big plus, while at the same time acknowledging that there's a variety of ways that students have been challenged, and it's something that we're paying a lot of attention to. I appreciate that you are able to serve as a voice for students, as there are other student groups that are doing that. I'm very pleased that there is the group that attended the MIA event, to have that workshop throughout the day. Some of the students who I think at this point have actually gone to Sutton High School to go to that diversity summit, and to continue to find ways for the administration to work with students in order to make sure that we are serving all of our students well, and making sure everyone is feeling heard and supported within our school community. So thank you for your efforts there, and for also sharing all the terrific things that are happening with students. I'm also the parent of a member of the senior class, and I think it's something that is very exciting that we're looking forward to having the typical year-end events to celebrate our seniors, and that so many of them are just performing so well in all the different areas, whether that's the performing arts, capstone project, science fair, speech and debate, just everything that's happening really is very gratifying with all the hard work our educators are doing and our students and our families supporting them. So thank you, and we really appreciate the update.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right. Next item on our agenda is a time-scheduled appointment. It is the district's response to the pandemic. With a report is Dr. Sawyer.
All right. All right, so this is our update for this meeting here on April 13th. And just a reminder again that our goal for the school year, which we've been able to accomplish, is to maintain full-time in-school learning with minimal disruption while minimizing the risk of contracting COVID. Our approach has been threefold: to implement those mitigation strategies to reduce risk, to create a sense of belonging that supports our students socially, emotionally, and the mental health, and then to provide learning opportunities that support their academic needs. This is the Johns Hopkins data we show you each time. Massachusetts is at 3%, still below that 5% benchmark. A little bit higher up in the rankings of states than it had been, but as we know, the BA2 variant has been showing up, particularly in the Northeast at this point, but still, well below where we were back in the end of the 2021 calendar year and into the early 2022. In terms of the history of that, you can see that we're still below that 5% benchmark and much better than we were back in the winter time. In terms of cases by age, continues to be a relatively small number compared to other age groups among young people. It has ticked up a bit since the last report we made at the end of March, but the numbers are still relatively low compared to where they had been. This is the hospital admission numbers. They've ticked up a tiny bit among young people, but still very, very rare occurrence in Massachusetts to have young people admitted to the hospital for COVID. You can see certainly to the right-hand side, those who are elderly are at a much higher risk of hospitalization. This is a number of every 100,000 people, so we're talking 1 to 3 in 100,000 for students from children through teenagers. Locally, we've been showing this slide all along, and we're continuing to. You can see the number of students we've had each of the weeks, and again, thus far this week, we're almost equal the number of students we had the full week last week, and that's a stat. We start each week with a Saturday to match the town's reporting system. These aren't quite as in sync as they were because, of course, a lot of the cases we become aware of are through rapid tests that students have taken at home, as opposed to statistics that are showing up in the public health system because there are a laboratory test that's been done, which is the town of Shrewsbury number. So the town of Shrewsbury number is certainly higher than those numbers, but those are specific numbers we have regardless of the type of test that our students number who are positive. It's still a less than 1% positivity rate for the total student population over the course of the month of April. This is our 14-day positive test rate. In Shrewsbury, again, the formal lab tests that go to labs is still a little under the 5% benchmark, but it's up higher than it was previous. Our numbers this week to date, we have had 50 cases so far in the district. That pushes us to 2,070 cases since the start of the school year. That's a number, again, that's been climbing. You'll see those statistics coming up as there are more cases, but we're not seeing an accompanying concern relative to the level of illness. This is the number in terms of just vaccinated versus unvaccinated in terms of cases, and you can see then again that the vast majority of our staff are vaccinated, so those cases tend to be with those folks, and with students it's you can see the numbers there in terms of the percentages who have tested positive. A reminder that we publish our dashboard on our website each Monday. You can see that last week we had 59 total cases that we, as of the Friday, April 8th, for that week. This is the day by day, so you get a sense of the visual. Big spike in December and January, and a titching up over the last few days here in April. This you can see by week. So that goes through the last full week there. Again, moving in an upward direction. We expect that's probably going to continue for a bit, and we're carefully monitoring that. But we're also paying very close attention to absenteeism and whether anyone is getting seriously ill, which have had one case of a staff member who did need to be hospitalized recently. That staff member is back to work, thankfully, but that has been a rare occurrence for us. I think it was the third case over the course of the year of those who did contract COVID. This is just the illustration of the numbers by school. And then as far as more of a distribution across age levels, this is the distribution across our grades. Total number of cases as far as students versus staff cases this year. This is just another look at our vaccination data, just to give some context. These numbers really haven't changed a whole lot since the last time I presented. So very high rate of vaccination, lower rate in terms of those who have had booster doses. And then if people want to look at these slides online, you can see the comparison data compared to other local communities. And again, those numbers have remained pretty static over the last several weeks. In terms of our testing program, we've continued to use our centralized site to provide rapid testing for people who are experiencing symptoms. So far, we've had 264 people take advantage of that. 20% of those folks were positive. Of course, they were coming with symptoms. And since March 1st, we've given 79 tests with only 6 positive results. Our pooled testing, we have about 15% of our students and staff participating. That positive test result, again, since March 1st, is under 1% for that. These are people who just don't have symptoms. They're just doing it to catch cases in case we have asymptomatic cases, and we do have a number each week, but it's a very small percentage of the sample. We also provide at-home antigen tests for those who signed up. People have to opt into that program. We've got about almost 2,000 students and 700 staff who are participating, and we have 3 positive results so far reported from those at-home tests. As far as our absentee rate, for the month of April, we're running at about 5%, a little higher than last month. But you can see that we went from, during the real surge during December, January, first week in January, we were at about 12%. And then that dropped down to 4% in February, and then about 4.5% over March. You can see the statistic there in terms of since March 1st on a day-by-day basis. And the statistic that when we asked the school committee to update to make masking optional indicated that if there was over a 10-day period, if we were looking at like an 8% or higher absentee rate, that's something that would trigger us connecting with the Department of Public Health to look at what was happening with that. So a little bit higher recently, but not near that threshold of 8% yet. Staff absences, I have data just through the end of March at this point, and as of the month of March, it was 5.7%, which had been a little higher than it had over February, but again, is a very small number relative to COVID. Certainly the last couple of weeks, we've had more staff testing positive as we've had this maybe a little bit of a mini uptick compared to what certainly much less than the middle of the winter, and we're keeping a close eye on that. There are some cases we continue to see that we think could be connected to school, but most of the cases we're seeing are not connected to specific individuals in the school environment. And that's just an illustration of the staff absences, with the blue being overall absences and the red being due to COVID. So again, we've been able to maintain our goal of keeping kids in school and minimize spread here happening in school. I think that the environment, the students referred to it, I think there is more of a sense of normalcy with many students not wearing masks, many staff not wearing masks. We certainly respect those who still may be a bit anxious about potentially contracting it. I think that level of anxiety has abated to some degree, and at the fact that we're not seeing very difficult levels of affecting people when they do have contract COVID, I think is reassuring, and we continue to consider and look very carefully to make sure that we're not seeing any outbreaks in a particular place, one particular classroom, or among a particular group, and so the fact that that is pretty minimal has been reassuring for us. So we're continuing to stay the course, and we'll continue to monitor very closely, and we'll adapt if we need to. But right now, looking forward to some more spring weather, and hopefully with more outside activities, continuing to keep those numbers low. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that the committee might have.
Great, thank you for the report. Colleagues, any questions or comments? Mr. Balich?
Just a question. Obviously, happy to hear that, when we do have staff and students who are experiencing COVID, they're in the population overall, they're experiencing severe symptoms less. I'm just curious, Dr. Sawyer, something you just said a second ago. Now that we're not doing the traditional contact tracing, you had noted that now we are trying to monitor where there might be outbreaks connected to a particular class. How exactly do we do that? Is that when there's absences that we can connect? If there's, at the high school level, I mean, they're not all in the same class all day. If
Right.
there's a series of absences, do we have a way of looking into that? Absent, the traditional contact tracing, how do
Sure.
we do that?
Yeah, it's not as as detailed contact tracing, but we're looking for numbers of students with where the COVID cases are happening, and are we seeing increases in COVID cases? And we're very confident that our families and staff are reporting cases to us, and that's something that is looking for those patterns where we do see of the cases we have each week, typically, and I'd say let's say roughly 50 cases last week, there were probably 3 to 4 situations where we think there could have been potentially transmission at school, but most of them were connected to family positivity outside of school, or there were a singleton of a student in a particular class who had COVID and no one else had contracted it. I think the nurses in each school are looking at which classes are kids attending. It's a little easier at the elementary level, of course, because they're in one particular class. Middle school, it's a little more complicated. High school, it's a lot. They're interacting with a lot of kids all day long. What we're not seeing either is lots of kids who sit together at lunch. Occasionally, we'll see a transmission, maybe kids who eat together, but that has not been a prevalent situation for us when we're seeing cases. So While not as detailed as that, we're still paying attention to whether or not kids who are in the same classroom environment, same athletic team, if we're seeing multiple cases. But when we do, we tend to see a small number. I know we had an example a week or so ago, one teacher who teaches small groups of students. A couple of those students that teacher works with were positive, and the teacher became positive. Not sure chicken or the egg who came first, but we're certainly could be very likely that those 3 cases were connected. But again, we're just looking to make sure that we're not having any. I think there's been some things in the news where there was a school in one of the Eastern Massachusetts communities where a very high percentage of the school became positive all at the same time, and there clearly had been some transmission within the school community for whatever reason. But that's the approach we're taking at this point.
Thank you.
Further questions or comments? Nope. Great. Well, thank you very much for the report.
Thank you.
All right. Next item on the agenda is under Finance and Operations. It's a vote required for extended school care program tuition and wages. At our last meeting on March 30th, Karen Isaacson, the Director of Extended Learning, presented a report on the fiscal status of the program and made a recommendation of a 2.25% wage increase for child care providers and a 2.75% increase for site coordinators, as well as a 5% tuition increase for FY23 for the committee's consideration in advance of the vote in tonight's meeting. Dr. Sawyer does concur with the recommendation provided by Ms. Isaacson, and you find his memo in our packet. We did not receive any feedback or?
Ms. Isaacson sent one email to us from a parent that was supportive of the increase.
Okay. Any further comments on this, Dr. Sawyer?
I did not receive any other than what Ms. Isaacson forwarded along, and have not received any other feedback. I think it's a reasonable increase based on the information we have. The extended school care program is still one of the most affordable around. It's a wonderful return on investment for families. It's a great program. We're very pleased we're able to offer it to pretty much anyone who wants it right now. That's been, as we talked about last time, it's been a little bit of a flip of what we're usually experiencing, which are long wait lists, because of so many families that still have the option to work from home. But we're expecting that to normalize a little bit more next year. And again, we are. I think Ms. Isaacson's recommendation is reasonable, and I support it.
Okay, great. There being no other comments, I need a motion that the school committee vote to adjust extended school care tuition by an increase of 5% for the 2022-2023 school year, and to adjust child care provider hourly rates by 2.25% and site coordinator hourly rates by 2.75% for the 2022-2023 school year.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, please do so by saying aye.
Aye.
And the motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay. Next item on the agenda is also under Finance and Operation. It's a presentation and vote on the fiscal year 2023 final school department appropriated budget. Dr. Sawyer and Mr. Collins presented the superintendent's initial recommendation for FY23 school department budget at the meeting on February 16th. The fiscal picture for next year has evolved, and while the bottom line remains the same, subtotals of funds in some of the different categories have been adjusted. And tonight, Dr. Sawyer and Mr. Collins will provide an update recommendation for the budget plan for the school department for the fiscal year 2023. So with that, I'll hand it over to Dr. Sawyer and Mr. Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Wensky. Again, this is a really good news story for our community, whereas in past years, due to the structural deficit we had relative to funding municipal government in Shrewsbury, including the school department, we are in a very stable position. And because of the circumstances around next year's budget for fiscal 2023, we'll actually be able to make some restorations and some new investments that are very important. So this is very good news for our community and for our schools. In terms of the topics we'll cover this evening, we'll give you an overview. We'll talk about again, making sure those who understand why we have this stability, that we do have this override agreement and some limitations to our budget, but at the same time, based on our cost projections, we're able to sustain what we're doing, and based on a variety of things, including enrollment, we're able to make some recommended new investments. So those are the things we'll cover this evening. And at this point, I'll turn it over to Mr. Collins to talk about some of the numbers.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Sawyer. So As Dr. Sawyer alluded to, this process is different than we've had in prior years in a very much good way. And certainly you can see that very early on in the budget process that the town manager had made his recommendation for a school department budget in February 11th of $79.3 million, which was able to allow us early in the budget development process to have a clear direction and stability and predictability going forward. And in response to that, Dr. Sawyer put together his recommendation that matches that, and that's where we are right now. It calls for just under $3.6 million increase, or 4.75% increase over the current fiscal year. On the next slide, you'll see basically the bullet points. Dr. Sawyer, if you could just advance that one. Thank you to that the override agreement that's in place calls for a baseline annual increase of the operating budget of 4.25%. Again, speaking to the stability and predictability going forward up through fiscal 25. And then, based upon the town manager's revised and updated revenue projections, if it's looks optimistic, then that 4.25% can go up to a maximum threshold of 4.75%. And that's where we are right now for fiscal 23. Certainly, we're not, our baseline for fiscal 24 will go back down to that 4.25%. And so we need to be planning for kind of the future of that going back down. But we're certainly appreciative that and thankful that for fiscal 23, we're at the 4.75% threshold. On the next slide, you can see a big picture pie chart overview of the allocation of the fiscal 23 budget. Of course, the biggest piece of this pie is salaries and wages, just over $66.3 million, or 84% of the overall appropriation. And this committee knows well that if we manage our personnel costs well, then that means we're going to have a stable budget into the upcoming fiscal year. Other categories just kind of pale in comparison in terms of the percentage, but kind of moving left to right. Transportation, that's for home to school transportation or private school transportation in Shrewsbury and Assabet Valley Regional Technical High School, 3.1 million or 4%. Special ed transportation in district is 1%. The special education tuitions for out-of-district students and vocational tuitions next year are budgeted at 4% and 2% respectively. Excuse me. And then the smaller categories of contractual services, those are services that we contract outsiders to provide either for special education services or repairs and maintenance or specialized foreign language translations, things of that nature. And then educational supplies and materials are kind of self-evident. Other expenses, the 1% would be for things like telephone expenses, athletic or office supplies, custodial supplies, and postage, just to name a few examples. But again, the largest piece of our educational enterprise comes down to personnel at 84%, which is a segue to this next pie chart, and it just shows kind of the personnel costs as a subset. And again, the biggest piece of that pie is our professional educators, our teachers, our nurses, our psychologists, at 47.7 million or 73% of all of our personnel costs. Is a little bit over 500 people in that group. And then the next largest is our paraprofessional staff, budgeted next year at just over $8.1 million. That includes a group of just about 275 staff members. And then again, the other groups are quite a bit smaller in comparison, with our secretarial and IT support, substitute teachers. Other wages includes funding for custodian police overtime for special events, our summer school program, crossing guards, stipends for extra duties, things of that nature. And then district administration, principals, assistant principals, athletic director, just over $3.9 million. So that's a breakout of our personnel costs in kind of major categories. This next chart basically shows a couple things, which is kind of the 50,000-foot level of our budget broken down into 4 major categories: the salaries, transportation, out-of-district tuitions, and then kind of everything else. And you can see we're looking at, for fiscal '23, what I think is somewhat of a unique year in that we have 2 of these 4 categories actually going down. So transportation services and our out-of-district tuitions going down by a combined almost $1.3 million due to decreases in enrollment for both ASAVIT and our out-of-district placements. So that's provided some opportunity for new investments, and that's kind of shown below the line there in orange. So above that is basically our carry forward, all of our existing staff, all of our existing programs, kind of a status quo look at it going forward. Calls for a 3.25% increase. But because of those decreases in those 2 categories, that we can leverage those dollars for some new investments for critical needs for the upcoming year. And Dr. Sawyer is going to detail those in a few minutes. But I just wanted to point out that this is an anomaly, and I would not expect this to reoccur for fiscal '24. But we're very grateful and fortunate that we're able to be able to add back some staff resources that were cut previously, and then also make some new investments. And then finally, again, talking about labor and all of our staffing for fiscal '23, our Unit A, our teachers, nurses, counselors groups, that's a group of over 500. We're still in negotiations. We believe very much nearing the end of that process. And then our next group, which we need to begin shortly, will be with our assistant principals and athletic director. It's a group of 11, very small group. And then our paraprofessionals settled earlier in this fiscal year with a cost of living allowance on the scale of 2.25%, but the majority of staff for fiscal '23 will also have a step increase, which provides for another 2% wage increase as well. So kind of a combined 4.25% there for the majority of staff for fiscal '23. So that is where we stand on some of the major financial pieces, and I'll turn it back to Dr. Sawyer to talk about the enrollment and new investments.
Thank you. Enrollment's something that we tracked very carefully, of course. We're very fortunate as a result of the opening of the new Beale School and the override. We were able to fund adequate positions, that we have class sizes that are well within the school committee guidelines almost across the board this current year at the elementary level, and stable where they should be at the high school level, and then the middle school with the maximizing our space there at the pretty much at the upper end of the school committee recommendations. Next year, these are projections that have been updated since we presented the budget in February. And again, really good class sizes across the elementary level. We're watching carefully a couple of decisions we had made. You can see the 2 sort of pinkish highlighted areas, I guess, where we have we're going to reduce from 6 sections of kindergarten to 5 at Floral Street, which still puts us at a very healthy 17 students per class at the lower end of the school committee recommendation for kindergarten. And then for 3rd grade, going from 6 to 5 sections with 17 students projected in 3rd grade class sizes at Floral Street, which is number of students below the 22 to 24 that we recommend starting 3rd grade and up through 8th grade. So those are 2 positions that where funding was removed from the budget since the original budget presentation in February, just based on not needing those sections. They'll be through attrition. We do have 2 retirements at Floral Street School, so no one will have to be moved as a result of that. Those 2 positions being removed, or class sections, I should say, being removed in the attendant teaching positions. The others that are highlighted in yellow are where we're watching very carefully. We have some low projections right now for Patton and Spring Street for kindergarten numbers at about 13 and 14 students projected. And right now we are trending as far as our kindergarten enrollment, even in terms of actuals, below that. And we're in the midst of that registration. We're going to monitor that carefully. We don't want to make a decision to downsize a section prematurely, but we also don't want to end up in a situation where we have class size numbers that are much lower than they need to be. And so we'll look at those two sections or those two grade levels at those two schools, as well as you can see the other highlight is grade 3 at the Patton School, where right now we're projecting about 16 students in a class and with 4 sections. And again, depending on how things shake out, we're right at the point of the year where we start to really hear about potential maternity leaves for next year, or other leaves. Sometimes I know we had a position, wasn't at the elementary level, that someone notified us their spouse is being transferred to another part of the country, they're going to be leaving us. So we want to provide stability. We're also looking carefully, if you take at the Beale School numbers, for example, in grade 3, they're looking at 22.5 in a grade, which would still be in the 22 to 24 recommended number for grade 3. But we also have a couple of sections of co-teaching there. We like to keep those numbers a little bit lower. And in case those numbers grew a little bit more than we expected, we wouldn't want to see an imbalance where we have some schools, in the mid-teens and other schools up in the mid-20s. So there's the potential, since we do have space, that we could reassign a section over to Beale if necessary. So we're just looking carefully at the remainder of the elementary sections, but we're very confident with the numbers being where they are, that Floral Street, we can move those 2 sections lower, which again frees up some dollars to make sure we can be stable in other places in the budget, as well as making the new investments that we'll be recommending. In terms of secondary schools, we're looking to be at 22 students in a class in 5th grade and 25 in 6th grade, 22 at the lower end of the 22 to 24, 25, 1 student over, but that's also a function of space availability. At Oak, we're projecting to be right at the higher end of the 22 to 24 recommended range for class size there. And certainly better than we were prior to the override, where we were pushing on, high 20s and 30 per class at the middle school level. So definitely an improvement over recent years. In terms of the high school, we don't display class size the same way because of the nature of the program, but we're confident we'll see similar numbers to what we saw this year, which were very good. Pretty close to where we like to be in terms of an 18 to 20 per class for a typical academic class at Shrewsbury High School. And then as far as preschool, we're projecting about 207 kids overall, with class sizes right where they should be in terms of our preschool numbers. So with that, the final piece I'd like to go over and present is just the recommended new investments, and restorations we'd like to make. These are both to increase or address the increased need for some mandated services in special education and English language education, to add staff to address the student mental health crisis, which we heard a lot of details about at our last meeting, and to provide proactive support for social and emotional learning, and then to restore some student opportunities where cuts have been made prior to the override year. In terms of special education, we're recommending the restoration of one of the preschool teachers and one of the preschool aide positions that was cut in the previous year. Excuse me. We're also suggesting adding a special education teacher at Shrewsbury High School because of caseload size there, and a fraction of a 0.4 full-time equivalent position for speech and language pathologist support at the elementary level. For English language learning services, based on student population, we're looking to add a position that would be shared between Coolidge and Beale schools, just to make sure we have the right ratios that are expected by the state there for kids who are learning English. In terms of addressing students' mental and behavioral health, we're recommending 2 additional adjustment counselors at the high school level, 1 additional adjustment counselor at the middle school level, all those because of increased caseloads, as well as hiring 2 positions that we call clinical coordinators. These are board-certified behavior analyst positions that work very closely with teams of educators where we have issues of significant student behavioral challenges. Even prior to the pandemic, the two existing positions we have were stretched very thin, and now even more so, and we believe that demand is not only there now, but will continue to be for the foreseeable future. And again, these positions can help us be proactive as well as reactive to difficult situations that we face. In terms of other specialized personnel, because of the number of school psychologists, school adjustment counselors, clinical coordinators we have across the district, it certainly is as big or larger than some of our other departments. And so we are recommending a director of clinical counseling and mental health who would serve under that student services umbrella to support those people with both professional expertise, supervision, and coordination, as well as coordination with outside mental health providers. Excuse me. Allergy season's upon us. Providing also a social worker. Many of the difficult situations we have in terms of trying to provide educational services to students are involve some really difficult outside of school situations. We've done contracting for social work support in the past, which has been helpful, but it's really not seen to be sufficient in terms of just the coordination of some of these outside social service agency work, whether that's Department of Children and Families, other groups that are supporting families, Shrewsbury Youth and Family Services. So to be able to have someone who is available to us full-time to help coordinate that work, we see as a real plus and able to be support families so that they can ultimately be providing support that can help us support their children's educational needs. In this next area, we talked about specialized personnel to address social and emotional well-being. There was a position that was suggested back in February that I've removed from my recommendation at this time, which was the potential for an instructional coach at the elementary level to coordinate some of the social emotional learning programming, provide staff training and coaching around best practices. And it's not because we don't think this could be a terrific idea to have someone like this. Right now, you heard in the presentation from Parker Road Preschool that all of our elementary schools and preschools, and our schools across the district actually, have school-based teams that are working on developing social and emotional learning practices in each school, and to also make sure they're coordinated across the district. And that work has been very positive, but we have more of it to do. And before we shape things up a little bit more of exactly what our needs are, we felt that it just wasn't the right time yet. It's just not ripe enough to determine to add a position. That may be something that comes in a future budget year, but right now that's something that, just given all the other needs and the amount of money we have to make investments and restorations, I've removed that from my recommendation at this time. And then you did have a presentation at your last meeting. We are continuing to recommend shifting funding for the existing mindfulness director position that we've enjoyed from grant and donation funding to the appropriated budget. And then finally, in terms of adding some programming back where we had previous budget cuts, I'm actually increased this since the last time we made a recommendation from 2 to 3 allied arts teaching positions at the middle level. Ms. Clowder's been working with Dr. Jones and Mr. Kelly, their teams around what would be best in terms of adding, what types of positions. We haven't nailed down the specific plan as of yet, but I can tell you that what is most likely to happen is some restoration of some programming in the performing arts with regard to drama and music, as well as the establishment of a program or some allied arts programming at Sherwood Middle School that would model after some of the enrichment program we've done there in the past in terms of what we call curriculum connections, but also be a complementary program very focused on science, technology, engineering, math, as well as the arts, the STEAM, so to speak. That would be very much complementary to the design lab experience kids have at Oak right now. So building on creativity in the STEM subjects and mixing in some artistic pieces in as well. It's something that they were pretty excited about and should be a very engaging type of approach. So how those exact 3 FTE would break down across those areas, I think we'd also be able to go back to something we did many years ago, which was to pull physical education out of these 30-day rotations of allied arts and actually have students at Sherwood be able to experience physical education throughout the year. Basically the same number of meetings, but doing it twice every 6-day cycle instead of for 30 days at a time, twice during the year. That's another benefit of adding these 3 FTE. And then finally, recommending that we remove a barrier to co-curricular programming access for students, which we had required for a number of years for families to pay a fee for kids to engage with co-curricular activities. This was presented to you, and you did agree at your last meeting to approve eliminating the activity fee next year, and so the appropriated budget reflects that amount of money that now will be picked up by our budget as opposed to coming directly from families, which I think, for all the reasons I stated last time, is a very important and positive development to get more kids engaged with school activities, especially those who where socioeconomics may have been a barrier. So this slide shows all of the recommended new investments and restorations on one page. As Mr. Collins referenced earlier, we have the ability to invest $1.13 million in these, and that's what these positions do. And so we're excited that based on some of the adjustments we're able to make, you see in the gray area under preschool, when we presented in February the full cost of those positions. Those positions will be offset to a large degree by family tuition who pay for preschool. So those numbers were lowered a bit. And then we were able to, we took down the instructional coach at the elementary level for social emotional learning. As that money came out, we added some money back in for that third position in the allied arts at the middle level. And because of the amount of money available based on some of what Mr. Collins described with transportation and out-of-district tuition, this enables us to stay within the parameters of the 4.75% budget and make these new investments. So with that, just want to again restate that our budget stability and predictability in this post-override environment is strong, and that's a huge service to what we can focus on, rather than thinking about what cuts we might have to make or what services we'd have to discontinue. We're in a very stable position. We are able to restore some of the positions that were cut and make these new investments. We're able to continue to leverage money we have from the federal government to address impacts of the pandemic. We are able to add things to address this acute student mental health crisis we're experiencing, maintain desirable class sizes, and overall strengthen our ability to achieve our mission, vision, and strategic priorities. So that is the recommendation we're making to you. We're asking you to vote this evening to support this budget if you see fit, and then that budget would be in turn recommended as the school department appropriation recommendation to town meeting for their approval in May. And so with that, Mr. Collins and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Collins. Dr. Sawyer, for the presentation. Colleagues, any questions or comments? Ms. Fritz.
Not a question, but I think it bears repeating that this could not have been done without the voters of Shrewsbury who voted for that $9.5 million override last year. It's a significant sacrifice for families to have a lot more added into their taxes, but this is giving us the opportunity that I've never seen in all my years on the committee to really be proactive and add back to the budget. Town Manager Kevin Mizikar and the Board of Selectmen partnered with the school committee last year in order to make this happen. This is a very strong budget plan and model going forward. And I think for us, during our discussions in the budget workshop, I was very happy to see much needed personnel for mental health and behavioral health issues. And I hope with these additional services and positions that we're going to be able to really pivot to a proactive versus a reactive response to mental health and SEL. So I think this is beyond a good news story. It's phenomenal what we're going to be able to do going forward, and I fully support this budget proposal.
Further comments, Mr. Palich?
To belabor, because it bears repeating, a point that Mrs. Fritz made, it is important to stop and thank the residents of Shrewsbury who, through the override, made the decision, the difficult decision, that this K-12 public school district should have the financial resources it needs to meet the needs of all of our students. And it is because of that community choice that we are in the position now to decide how best to invest these additional resources. I support the budget recommendation that's before us, in addition to meeting the academic needs of students as we understand and can predict them. I am pleased that this budget chooses to prioritize as a point of investment with additional resources, additional staff positions that are designed to address the increased mental health crisis that our students are facing. It is probably perhaps one of the defining features of this school year is the presentation of the result of an growing mental health crisis, and I think it is both appropriate and necessary that our additional investments are targeted at addressing the mental health needs of our students. So I am pleased to support the budget recommendation that we have before us tonight.
Further comments? Ms. Heffernan?
Yeah, I certainly would agree with my colleagues. It is a very different place that we are in this year, and that is all to the voters. And I would also just remind those who are listening, having recently been in positions to talk with some voters who maybe don't quite remember that part of our agreement with the Board of Selectmen was also the creation of the Override Stabilization Fund. And what that gives us both is the understanding that these sort of investments in our community, now we don't know what our expenses are going to look like, and I appreciate the caveats that Mr. Collins provided, but 4.25 and potentially is slightly higher than that, then we can expect those over a number of years, in part because we have tax dollars going into a stabilization fund to kind of keep us steady, just like a family would budget for, right? That you put money away when you can. And so I think it's incredibly fiscally responsible, and I'm very, very appreciative of the voters for having supported it. And I think given where we are right now, the investments being proposed, it's great to say the word investments, the investments being proposed in both mental health and also across the district at a bunch of different levels. I think we're trying to, I see the attempt to shore up in a lot of different places. I particularly appreciate the focus at the middle school level with 2 middle schoolers and trying to find things that engage them and excite them in the allied arts and more phys ed. I'm very supportive of, but I think this is a very healthy place for us to be, and appreciate the thoughtfulness that went into its creation. So thank you.
Great. Okay. Any further comments?
I'm good with everything my colleague said. I support this budget. I think it's well thought out. It's very progressive. It's such a change from what we've seen in the past, and I have nothing new to say. Everything looks good to me.
Great. Well, this is a great news story. I'd like to thank Dr. Sawyer, Mr. Collins, and your staff for all the time and effort you put into this budget cycle and helping us land the plane, as they say. Certainly it's a much different feeling than a year ago when we were trying to figure out which way things would go after the town election. And really, predictability and stability have not been in the same sentence with school budget as long as I've been here, and probably as long as Sandy has been as well, and Dale. So it's just great, and I really appreciate the partnership that we forged with the Board of Selectmen and Town Manager Kevin Mizigar, and it's just been a great effort, and it's just been an enjoyable budget cycle to talk about investments. And I think it's important for the public to know that we are delivering on the promises made a year ago. Not only are we staying within the framework of the override, but we're adding back positions that we lost over the last several years. And we're also addressing some critical needs of this district that haven't been there until the last 2 years of the pandemic, in particular with the mental health challenges that we've seen. Also happy to see that we're providing a return on investment to families with the removal of those activity fees as well. So I do support this budget wholeheartedly. But any further comments, Dr. Sawyer?
No, I appreciate the comments, and look forward to moving this forward to town meeting.
Okay. With that, it does require a committee vote. So I need a motion that the school committee vote to recommend a fiscal year 2023 town appropriated school department budget of $79,318,971 as presented for town meeting approval.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, please do so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And the motion carries unanimously. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item on our agenda is under new business. It's the evaluation of the superintendent. We'll also require a vote from the committee. For background for the public, the superintendent's performance evaluation provides feedback on Dr. Sawyer's performance from June 2021 through the present. I, as chairman, have written a composite evaluation based on the information provided by Dr. Sawyer in his self-evaluation, as well as input from other committee members. And I'll present that tonight. School committee members are also encouraged to add commentary and feedback as you see fit. The composite evaluation, as well as written feedback regarding Dr. Sawyer's performance as superintendent from surveys sent to SPS staff and to families and community members, has also been provided under separate cover. So with that, I will begin the process. Full disclosure, this is now the 4th performance appraisal that I've delivered in the last week. 3 of 4 were private. Obviously, I think this is the first one in my professional career that I've delivered publicly. So just to make note of that, first time I've been chair, so this is obviously new territory for me as well. So what I'll do is I'll go through each section of the evaluation, state the school committee's rating of that section, along with collective high-level summary of the committee's comments within each section. So we'll start with goals. So for the student learning goal, the school committee rating is that some progress was made. And I'll just go through the comments. There's no public education pandemic playbook for student learning, and this level of unpredictability presented many challenges in addition to other non-pandemic related issues that required a significant amount of Dr. Sawyer's time and effort. The confluence of these challenges prevented him from making the progress that he would have liked to make in this goal, as acknowledged in his own self-appraisal. Throughout these challenges, Dr. Sawyer developed metrics by pulling data from a variety of sources and presented them in a manner that was easy for the school committee members and the community to understand, and as a result, he successfully met the critical needs of the school committee, of the school community, sorry. Next up, for the professional practice goal, the school committee rating is that significant progress was made. Dr. Sawyer's communication with staff and the community provided valuable information in a calm and caring manner and displayed strong leadership during unprecedented times. His communication has been measured, thoughtful, frequent, and clear. While the goal of exploring alternative means of communication remains ongoing, SPS stakeholders express confidence that they are kept current on major happenings within the district. And for the progress towards district goals, the school committee rating is that significant progress was made. Dr. Sawyer's leadership to maintain the goal of full in-person learning as a top priority was handled in a thoughtful, caring, and intelligent manner, with health and well-being of students and staff as his top priority. He has handled many challenging issues with grace and compassion. Dr. Sawyer's detailed oversight of the district's response to the pandemic reassured the community that the district is taking a comprehensive approach to our responses, consistently aligned to the latest public health guidelines and laser focused on the goal of minimizing disruptions to in-person learning for all students. The mental health needs of our students has evolved as a major need, and Dr. Sawyer is always providing ways to help the community access support, as seen in many communications to families and emails, coordinating virtual meetings with mental health experts, and a future-forward focus within a budget cycle for the next school year by recommending investments in critical resources to mitigate this escalating mental health crisis. Under the next section, it will be regarding the superintendent's standards. We'll start with Standard 1 under instructional leadership. The school committee rated as proficient. Dr. Sawyer maintained instructional leadership proficiency while managing through a very challenging time for our school district. He continues to face unprecedented challenges as a result of the pandemic and other issues that he's had to address throughout the year. While these challenges took a significant amount of time from Dr. Sawyer, he was still able to make progress and be an effective instructional leader. Dr. Sawyer and his staff have done commendable work in attempting to support student needs, assess impact on learning, and make adjustments where possible to address gaps and ensure student success. This work is and will remain very much in progress because the impacts of the pandemic are ongoing, often inconsistent and unpredictable. For Standard 2, management and operations, the school committee rated this as exemplary. Dr. Sawyer's forward thinking makes him an exceptional leader in management and operations. This mindset led to many successes throughout the school year, in addition to mitigating many challenging aspects such as recruiting and hiring, while balancing the resource needs of our staff and students. His performance over the last 2 years of pandemic challenges shows his level of professionalism and ability to quickly pivot to meet the changing needs of the district. Dr. Sawyer is ethical, articulate, thoughtful, and collaborative in all that he does as Shrewsbury's Superintendent of Schools. It is worth noting that the district is on sound budgetary footing for the coming years, a situation unknown in Shrewsbury in nearly a generation. That could not have happened without the superintendent's leadership. We would like to single out for particular praise the superintendent's commitment to focusing increased investments in the coming fiscal year on mental health supports. For Standard 3, family and community engagement, the school committee rated as exemplary. Dr. Sawyer's communication to families and the community has been steady and consistent during a very challenging year. His thoughtful, informative emails provide valuable insights into the current status of the pandemic as it relates to Shrewsbury Public Schools and the impact on our community. Additionally, Dr. Sawyer had to respond to many non-pandemic related issues that needed to be addressed in a timely, measured manner. This includes, but is not limited to, the SHS mascot petition, the community group concerns pertaining to the school calendar, and responding to students' basic rights to study controversial topics in schools. In every case, Dr. Sawyer dealt with these issues in a calm, dispassionate manner that maintained civility and showed high values, fairness, and respect. It is important that the district continue to center its diversity, equity, and inclusion work, as this is necessary to ensure that all families continue to feel welcome. Dr. Sawyer is leading from the values of true family engagement. His communication has been clear, and their frequency and openness have helped to bring reassurance to families in a time of significant anxiety throughout the community. For Standard 4, under professional culture, the school committee rating is exemplary. Dr. Sawyer leads by example and sets the tone that is clearly seen throughout the district. A strong staff culture, such as the one that we enjoy, could not exist without a strong superintendent. He masterfully sets a leadership vision and tone for all the work of the district and is incredibly well respected by staff and families alike. He is sensitive to the many needs and perspectives of all staff and students. Dr. Sawyer has been forthright in areas of need and how the district is working to be more inclusive. He has shown the ability to provide balanced and fair decision-making, as well as empathy and understanding of issues within our schools and communities. And finally, the overall summative rating for Superintendent Dr. Sawyer's performance, the school committee rated as exemplary. Dr. Sawyer's leadership and professionalism continues to guide the district through unprecedented times. While dealing with the pandemic has been very challenging on its own, it's compounded by the FY22 budget challenges. Dr. Sawyer's collaboration with the town manager, board of selectmen, and school committee led to a successful Proposition 2.5 override and much needed funding to provide predictable school budgeting, including the successful opening of the new Beale School and an FY23 budget that provides funding to add back in previously cut areas of the budget. Dr. Sawyer's handling of the mascot issue and other unforeseen issues was done with empathy, a careful assessment of the issues, and supporting facts. We are grateful for his approach on these issues within our district and his willingness to listen to all stakeholders, evaluate, investigate, and oftentimes make difficult decisions. Over the next year, the school committee recommends Dr. Sawyer refocus his efforts on the strategic needs of the district and become less involved in the day-to-day operations. There were many unavoidable instances where Dr. Sawyer had to wear multiple hats, especially as the district experienced staffing shortages. The committee has assisted Dr. Sawyer with improvements to central office staffing resources, such as HR, and this should allow him to take a step back and focus on strategy, student learning, professional practice, and the overall district goals. Additionally, the committee also recommend Dr. Sawyer for more in-person engagement within each of our schools through recurring site visits to make personal connections with principals, educators, staff, and students. And finally, Dr. Sawyer represents the best in his field, and Shrewsbury Public Schools benefits greatly due to his work. We are extremely fortunate to have a capable, dedicated leader during a moment when educational leadership has become exceptionally difficult. There are many in Dr. Sawyer's position that are leaving the profession entirely, as the public spotlight is harsher and less forgiving than in the recent past. Dr. Sawyer remains significantly invested in the success of Shrewsbury Public Schools as a leader, resident, and parent within our district. And with that, that is the evaluation. Colleagues, any further comments? Ms. Heffernan.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Wensky, for putting the composite together. And Dr. Sawyer, I know this is your favorite part of the year, but I do just want to point out that I don't think was mentioned, but I think is an important data source for all of us, is the surveys that went out to families and staff. And so there were if I have my math right, 463 submissions. And about 267 of those were staff, the remaining from families. And I read every comment, and I'm very confident that you read every comment too, Dr. Sawyer. And while there are a couple that make some suggestions about ways for us to improve, and there are worthwhile ideas in there, the vast majority of them were exemplary is the only word that comes to mind. That adding, when asked about the overarching effectiveness as in your role, Dr. Sawyer, we had 96% of staff rating you either effective or highly effective, with nearly 75% at highly, and for families even higher at 97%, where 87% them again said highly effective. And so I feel very confident in knowing that when people stop me in the grocery store during the pandemic, or those little ways where they're like, I can't believe what's going on, I can't believe the world is changing, thank goodness we have Joe Sawyer, right? And there was a calming, reassuring presence that I believe we saw in the buildings, and I know we saw it in our communities. So I'm very supportive of the overarching evaluation here, and just want you to know the value you really bring for all of us. So thank you.
Ms. Riggs.
I think for me, what I've seen over the years that you've been superintendent, it's increasingly complex, multifaceted, and you've adapted and you've changed to that. And it's been a lot. I think the pandemic was certainly challenging, but on top of it, we've had a lot of other issues that we've never dealt with as a school community. You have empathy, and you always carefully assess issues and facts. I'm really grateful for that approach and your willingness to listen. I know sometimes answers aren't ultimately what everybody wants, but you make decisions that are right for the district and for student education. So I'm grateful for that. And as Ms. Heffernan said, you put surveys out to the community, staff, and parents. I don't know a lot of other superintendents who open themselves up for that type of input, and I think it's valuable to us as school committee members. Again, we read everything, and I was really struck by one comment in the survey, and they're anonymous, so we don't know who's making these, but it says, Dr. Sawyer was one of my principals growing up in Shrewsbury, and I am beyond fortunate to now have a son attending Shrewsbury Public Schools with Dr. Sawyer as superintendent. As a family, we always appreciate his communication and strong leadership. We could not ask for anything better. Thank you. So not only does it probably make you feel really old, but I think to me that just really resonated. Your tenure here has been long, and you've touched so many broad issues, and you've handled them extremely well. I'm hoping we go back to some normalcy, and that you're able to really concentrate on maybe some other things and new initiatives and working with your staff, and not having to do all these day-to-day things that we probably didn't think were going to happen over the past few years. So thank you to everything you do. I think we are extremely fortunate to have you here.
Thank you. Great. Mr. Palich.
It was paramount in my mind writing the evaluation this year that here we are sitting in 2022, and we are at the end of a cycle of 5-year strategic priorities. Our 2017 to 2022 5-year strategic priorities was something that this committee, and indeed a big group of community stakeholders, put a lot of effort into, deciding where we wanted to go as a district by 2022, what milestones we wanted to achieve, and over the life of this 5-year strategic plan, we've spent 2 of those 3 years mired in the pandemic. And I remember points at which it wasn't clear what the next month was going to look like. The 5-year goals had gone so far off the radar screen. It was crisis management day to day, week to week. We were meeting virtually for a while. Everything was new. Everything was different. Everything was an emergency. Everything was triage. And it is astounding to me, having gotten here to 2022, how many of these goals, especially the big ones, we have actually managed to achieve. And in spite of the focus that other subjects have necessarily and appropriately received, if you were to, over an arc of many years, write a history of Shrewsbury Public Schools that included the past few years, the 2021 operational override, the opening of the new Beal School and the space issues that solved, and the ability to, and in fact providing tuition-free full-day kindergarten to all families who want it. Those are all three separate incredible milestones for Shrewsbury Public Schools. We have achieved a lot in spite of all the challenges that have been thrown in our face as a district, and that has to come from leadership. That comes from Dr. Sawyer's persistence through a lot of very difficult times, not only managing those crises, but also keeping his eye on the ball, keeping his eye on the broader picture. We are not only coming out of the pandemic in what I think, from what I've seen and observed for other districts, in a comparably strong shape, but we have also managed to achieve some long-term objectives that I think 18 months ago, I mean, we weren't even really able to spend time thinking about or talking about because everything else was such an emergency. So that is a direct result of the superintendent's leadership. As has been alluded to several times, the superintendent has also had to respond to a lot of emergencies, controversies, crisis situations, and things that have really gripped the community's attention. And I think that the superintendent has been a tremendous calming influence on the district and the community, which I commend him for. I will say, and I bring no news to the superintendent when I say calming, some of those issues doesn't mean that they've gone away. We certainly have a lot of lingering issues. In particular, I want to call attention to the need to continue to focus on the district's diversity, equity, and inclusion work, and the need to continue to center that in our work and activities. But overall, this district is extremely fortunate to have Dr. Sawyer setting the tone for our district. Shrewsbury Public Schools remains a place where professionals want to work. And it's not because we pay the most, we don't. It's not because we're the easiest place to work, we're not. It's because Shrewsbury has a professional culture that people are attracted to. They want to work in, they want to be a part of the teams throughout Shrewsbury Public Schools. And that tone has to be set from the top. So I think that the superintendent deserves the very positive ratings he's received from each of us.
Dr. McGee?
When I think of a professional, I think of someone who has special knowledge, special skills, learns new things, confronts new problems, and adapts as things go along. This is not something that one can generate a job description for and really feel that it is adequately being addressed. And you define a professional. You learn new things. You're immersed in this job, and you clearly enjoy it. You're immersed in this community, and you are felt to be a part of it. And all of those things taken together are what makes you the superintendent that you are, and the very special person in this community that we are benefiting from. You have risen to the occasion over and over. I've been dazzled by how you become an expert in public health and have communicated complicated ideas by answering the concerns of the parents and the students in clear data that they can relate to, not bits of information that people may not understand. It was clear, and it was a new skill set for you, and you got there in a hurry. I remember a few years ago when the question about heat was, when do we close the schools? And I heard that you were on the top floor of some of the schools with a wet bulb thermometer trying to determine what a safe level was. You learn what you need to learn, you adapt to the environment, you do an extraordinary job. And when the going gets tough and the budget is tanking, you even forego a raise just to show solidarity with the community and with the parents to make sure that they could be given the education that we all want them to. So you've demonstrated exceptional professionalism and your ability to learn new things and put that to the benefit of your job is really remarkable. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, first off, I think it's the first year I've been chair, but I can tell you that there are obviously many layers to the role of superintendent, and certainly the public is able to appreciate, most of the work that you do, whether it's through planning, communication, and certainly, what matters most, the results in the classroom. But there's a whole other aspect to this role, and I know my colleagues will agree, that is only really seen from the view of a school committee member. Of course, we have many public meetings, but there are also many executive sessions and just, the phone calls and just really complex situations that, we are only exposed to. And I can tell you that as chair, there's also another unique view that you have of that level of work. And I can tell you that, Dr. Sawyer is always one step ahead of a challenging situation. it's that forward thinking that we've talked about over many years of doing these evaluations, and just, the discussion within school committee in general. I mean, take your pick between discussions on the mascot, basic rights of students, COVID mitigation protocols is a whole other layer that wasn't there, 2 years ago. We weren't talking about masks, and it's just amazing to me how you're able to keep it together and keep the success within the classroom, and, looking out for the health and safety of staff and students. It's really, it's just amazing to see, and I really appreciate all the work that you're putting in to keep our schools successful. And I also believe that it's very valuable to have a school leader that's also invested in the town as a resident and as a parent to students. To me, school leader, town resident, and parent. I mean, from my perspective, that's like the triple crown of, like, for a school committee member, right? To have somebody who's here, who's present, who really has a stake in the success for the district. So thank you. It doesn't seem like enough, but thank you for everything that you're doing every day to keep the success of this district as your primary focus. So with that, I'll hand it off to you.
Thank you. It's very humbling, and I appreciate the feedback very much from the school committee, as well as you alluded to the surveys that I put out each year. And I do appreciate the constructive feedback, and certainly areas where people want to see growth or change or improvement, because that's what I think we have as a culture in our district, is wanting to continue to improve in important ways to serve kids. But certainly people's appreciation, it was very gratifying to read many of those comments, and certainly to hear your comments this evening from a school committee that I have immense respect for. We are very fortunate in Shrewsbury to have had, over my career, and even prior to that, going back decades, a school committee that it focuses on advocacy for kids and doing what's right for children in the community, while respecting citizens, especially those who are paying taxes to support the schools, and the families and the parents who are looking for the value of why, and most of them and many of them moved to Shrewsbury in the first place, so that they could have the benefit of a strong education for their children. Without a lot of drama, without a lot of politicizing things, it's always been a very professional environment. It's one where it's really a privilege to be able to practice as a school leader with the support of 5 citizens like yourselves who do this work for no pay, in many, many hours in order to support what we're trying to do. And it's been my privilege to work with you in that manner. It's also my privilege to work with an incredibly strong leadership team. It's a team effort. Anything that we're given as accolades really applies to our entire team of leaders across the district, from our central office leaders to our principals and assistant principals, department directors. Everyone is part of our district leadership team. It just pulls together to do the work that needs to be done to serve children well. We have, and that also goes for town leaders. I very much appreciate the collaboration, especially with Mr. Kevin Mizikar, the town manager, but all the other town department heads. We're very fortunate, and I see that as a resident of Shrewsbury, to have the kind of quality of services and quality of support for all different aspects of our lives here. And I think it is a very high quality of life, and we're happy to contribute to that through the school department. Our central office support staff is superb. They just give outstanding customer service, both internally to all of our employees as well as to the public. And particularly, of course, Beth McCollum, my executive assistant, does immensely important and good work that supports me. And I could not do the kinds of things that I need to do each day without her being able to communicate on my behalf and organize my work and to interact with everyone who needs to communicate with my office. In terms of we have the best educators, paraprofessionals, support staff anywhere. They're the ones who are doing the work on the ground every day with students to help improve their lives. And it's just, I continue to just be beyond impressed. It really is just, and the way that they stepped up these last 2 years to do the work that needed to be done to support children and young people has just been, I will take that with me the rest of my career and beyond, in terms of just how proud I am of how we've responded to the challenges over the past couple of years with the pandemic and all the other issues that you've referenced. Our families are superb. It's certainly Also terrific to be able to know and have gotten to know over the years many families here in Shrewsbury. And it's a wonderful place to live and raise a family, and I certainly see the value that supportive families provide to make sure that their kids are supported in ways that help us educate them well. And students, you've seen some of them tonight. Our students are so respectful. It is always makes my day whenever we have people visit from somewhere else, interact with our students in some way. Our students go someplace and perform. Always get kudos about how engaging those students are. I was actually just having a conversation with someone the other day, and I think it was one of the local stores, and they mentioned that they were talking to someone in their family, and they were just impressed with the way that they'd had an opportunity to how Shrewsbury students were able to engage with adults in an environment, and that they had a voice in that. That was maybe not as typical as what this other family had experienced in other places, and that's something I think goes to what our educators do to prepare them and have them and ensure that they do have a voice in what they're doing, and that they feel empowered. And then finally the one alumna and 2 current students who live in my home, and especially my wife. Without their support, I could not do this work. It can be very intense work. It's very time-intensive work. It is incredibly interesting and engaging work, but it does take and require some sacrifice to be able to do it well and without the support of my family, including my mom, who has done a lot to help, and she helped with some rides today of getting people where they needed to go, who was my first and best educator and a teacher, and I come from a family of educators, and we think it's just, I was raised to believe, as Dr. McGee talked about, education is ultimately the key to people improving their lives, and to be able to do this work in such a place, especially as Shrewsbury, is absolutely my privilege. So thank you, I appreciate it, and again, I'm very, very humbled.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, we need to vote on the evaluation that was just delivered, so I need a motion that the committee vote to approve the formal evaluation document created by the chair.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, please do so by saying aye.
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 And the motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes. The minutes from our meeting held on March 30th were enclosed. Any revisions or edits? There being none, they will be accepted as written. We do need to go into executive session tonight. Therefore, I need a motion that the school committee enter into executive session, A, for the purpose of addressing Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 30A, Sections 21A7, to comply with or act under the authority of any general or special law or federal grant and aid requirements. Purpose 7, Open Meeting Law, Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 30A, Sections 22F and G, for the purpose of reviewing, approving, and/or releasing executive session minutes. And B, for the purpose of addressing Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect of the bargaining or litigating position of the public body and the chair so declares. Purpose 3, the Shrewsbury Education Association, Units A and/or B, the Shrewsbury Paraprofessional Association, and/or the Cafeteria Workers Association. And C, for the purpose of addressing Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A2, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel. Purpose 2, where deliberation in an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the public body, and return to open session only for the purpose of adjourning for the evening.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call vote is required. Mr. Palich?
Aye.
Fritz? Ms. Fritz?
Aye.
Ms. Heffernan?
Aye.
Myself, aye. Thank you and good night.